committee is certainly has done an enormous job. They have dedicated themselves. They're not left committee.
We seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
The leader of the opposition, you have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style. And so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
It's a very interesting question.
The Bubb Report with Dr. Kellon Bubb. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
A pleasant good morning to our viewers and listeners, and we welcome you to yet another edition of the Bubb Report. I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellon Bubb, and a happy Sunday to one and all. Of course, for those of us who are here in the northeastern part of the United States, we are in the throes of a snowstorm. As we know, here in D.C., I'm in the D.C. area, and it is expected that we're going to be getting about, they said, 10 to 12 inches of snow. So it's pretty much Snowmageddon. I'm looking out now my window and I see some folks, some kids doing some sledding out there. I see some folks shoveling on the other end. I will try and get some action, but I will tell you this, I honestly at this point in time prefer to be in Grenada because the temperature check, it's actually about just about 21 degrees Fahrenheit here in the nation's capital. But my mind right now is actually on Grenada and on a beach, not on the snow that's happening. So we want to welcome you, those of you who are joining us from the diaspora. Please let us know where you're watching us from. And if you are also experiencing snow in the comment section, I see that we have Iva DeBellat, who is joining us from Brooklyn. Iva, welcome to the Bubb Report this week. We also have Anastasia Peterson, who's joining us from Montreal, Canada, where I believe it will be much colder than it is here in the nation's capital. So welcome one and all, and we're happy that you can join us this week. Please remember to like and share this week's program as well as you coming into the room. And let me get straight into the editorial. Now, once a decade, the United Nations organizes a meeting where every country in the world comes together to determine what to do about drugs. And up to now, they have pledged to wage a relentless war to fight until the planet is quote-unquote drug-free. Now, they have consistently affirmed UN treaties written in the 1960s and 1970s, mainly by the United States, which require every country to arrest and imprison their way out of drug-related problems. Now, how has that worked out? But this approach has been a disaster, an unmitigated disaster, if you will. The drug war is now the subject of a raucous debate in the United States and around the world. The reasons why US citizens are rejecting the war on drugs narrative, as it turns out, are also the reasons why it is being rejected all over the world, from the Caribbean to Europe and South America. Now, in August of 2014, then Justice Minister for Jamaica, Mark Golden, had to make a phone call no government official ever wants to make. He had to explain to a mother that her son was dead. Mario Dean was picked up on the street because he was smoking a spliff, put into custody, and beaten to death. It was for Golding a moment that made him realize he could no longer support his country's drug laws. All over the world, the criminalization of cannabis has been used as an excuse to harass minorities. In Jamaica's case, the poor and the Rastafarian communities. And Golding said then, it has worsened the relationship between those young people in his country and law enforcement. So he persuaded the cabinet to decriminalize cannabis for personal possession. He said he wanted to take ganja out of the picture as a medium through which the police would use a hard or heavy policing against younger black men in particular. Now, existing UN drug treaties allow decriminalization of marijuana in small amounts for personal use, as was done in Grenada, but they do not allow countries to create regulated structures for buying and selling recreational marijuana in large quantities, which would drive the drug dealing gangs out of business. Now, Grenada and the Caribbean countries where recreational marijuana use is limited to small quantities is therefore still required to wage a futile war on people who sell weed and farmers who grow them, meaning there still is an armed conflict between police and the young men whom they accuse of drug dealing. I always make the point that all of the drug raids we see in Grenada and all over the Caribbean does not happen in particular privileged communities. It is always in a rural farming community when it happens. And I can assure you that in privileged communities, a lot of weed smoking happens in the same way that it happens in underprivileged ones. Now, marijuana legalization is essential to make its use just above board. And of course, it will also make it safer and less damaging. But unless done thoughtfully, it risks exacerbating the same inequalities as prohibition. It is, however, imperative that Grenadian policymakers engage with Rastafarian farmers and other marijuana growers as stakeholders and gather evidence about how they can be included in future economic opportunities brought on by the decriminalization of the herb. As a process of decriminalization and legalization must take into account the social, cultural, and economic history of the country instead of allowing the emergent legal market to be captured by corporations and powerful global north investors. Let's not turn decriminalization into another CBI scheme for rich people. The model that is being implemented in New York, where people formerly convicted for cannabis-related offenses should be prioritized in the cannabis, whatever cannabis future retail scheme that can be adopted in Grenada for marijuana growers. And finally, it is important to note that there is a strong urge among the Rastafarian community in the Caribbean for the articulation of marijuana decriminalization processes with reparations for those who suffered state violence due to drug policy related offenses. This is an important discussion to have in the moment when the debates on reparations for the violence and humanity of slavery and the post-emancipation period are gaining momentum. Folks, this is the Bubb Report. Again, as you're coming into the room, please make sure that you're liking and sharing this week's live stream. So what we're going to do, we are going to take a quick break and come back for our first segment of the program. Please stand by for that.
Tell us, a commissioner of police, tell a politician, back off. You have no knowledge of the law. You have no knowledge of law enforcement. You cannot force my officers to do the wrong thing.
But that is somebody's son. That is somebody's child. That is part of a family. And I think that is the part that they are missing out.
Because E and F are apt to be used oppressively.
It's like because we don't see disabled people as sexual beings, which is ridiculous.
You mean they don't want to listen to your version of science? They have their own science. You have your science.
What we need to do is teach people to think and not what to think.
Today, it's too bad that everybody do what they want.
If I could forgive Bernard Ford, then I could forgive Bob Morris too. And today, on this day, I no more have anything in my heart for what he did.
The education system has to be very fluid and dynamic because we're living in very different and changing times.
Treating all your citizens equally, all your citizens fairly, recognizing each group, not discriminating against one or the other.
Should your love...
And viewers and listeners, we welcome you back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. And of course, we received news last week that Grenada's longest-serving Prime Minister and one of the Caribbean community's longest-serving leaders and politicians has formally announced his intention to retire, naming a constituency successor. Dr. Mitchell is not only retiring as the longest-serving head of government in national and regional history, but also as one of the longest-serving lawmakers, having been the representative of his constituency for just over 40 years. Now, in walking into the political sunset, he would likely be reflecting on the fact that he and his party had won all 15 House seats in several elections, a feat which has, in recent years, only been emulated by Barbados's Mia Mottley and the Labour Party there. The BLP has twice swept all 30 seats and appears to be on course to win a large majority in snap elections in Barbados, called for early February next month. Now, almost a year ago, Mitchell resigned as opposition leader, handing the role to his colleague, the Honourable Emmeline Pear. And of course, the Right Honourable Keith Claudius Mitchell was born to Dowlin and Catherine Mitchell of Brizan St. George on the 12th of November, 1946. He received his primary education at the Happy Larcy School and the J.W. Fletcher Memorial Primary School at the time. Of course, he went on to the Presentation Brothers College and then to the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, where he gained a Bachelor of Science degree in Math and Chemistry in 1971, followed by a Master's degree from Howard University in 1979, and a doctorate in Math and Statistics from the American University in 1979. Of course, here to make sense of Dr. Mitchell's legacy is a constituent of Dr. Mitchell. That is my colleague, Raul Titus. Raul, welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. My brother, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And it's snowing outside, just like on your neck of the woods in Washington, is it? Yeah, it's
correct.
A lot of snow outside on the streets, covering all the vehicles.
Yes, it's very...
Just like you, we would want to be where
it's nice and warm and the air is great. Yes, absolutely. So, Raul, welcome to the Bubb Report. Of course, we will have a full-throated panel reflecting on Dr. Mitchell's legacy on a subsequent program. But before we get into this conversation, Raul, I do want to go down memory lane a bit. I love going into the archives. As a researcher, that's something that I do. So, Raul, let's go down memory lane with Dr. Mitchell a bit here. Let me get that audio going.
The ALF committee certainly has done an enormous job. They have dedicated themselves. They're not being paid by anyone for this, but I think their own dedication in the country's development and their own interest in the country has certainly been the hallmark of what they're doing for our country at this particular time. So I think it's important for us to compliment them and to cheer to them for the enormous effort and cheer to it. Yes, toast to the LF committee and to Richard on his initiative here in Grenada at this time.
On Friday last.
As Minister of Information, I do not know if you are privy to speak on the GBN issue.
Oh no, well, I assume that the parties are deep in consultation with the Minister of Labour. We have already indicated that we support the Minister's recommendation and that we will work with the other party to ensure that they're implemented. I think that is precisely what I think the Minister have already indicated this today to the parties involved, and therefore we standing by the support of the Minister.
Okay, and finally, so there is a feeling on the ground that the government should retake GBN. What are your thoughts on that?
The government will not go in the other direction of its basic philosophy, which is privatizing areas that which government feels should be better handled by the private sector. As I said, there are concerns that some people have about the operation of the communication media. I think whatever concerns they have should not lead to the question of government acquisition of that particular asset. We don't think that's necessarily the best way to go. And it's in fact sending a complete opposite message of the government philosophy. I think there must be other ways of solving whatever problems and concerns that exist. And I think that's essentially what it is. We're working with both parties to solve this thing because we clearly do not want any instability in the country at this particular time, and it's not in anybody's interest. I don't think any of the parties certainly want to see instability in the country at this time. That our flag represents, in every respect, our pride and our national identity in every respect. So we should always be protecting that national flag and doing everything to respect it.
So that was Dr. Mitchell and I on several media engagements in Grenada. That was, I suppose, those were the glory days when Dr. Mitchell still gave me access to interviews with him. But Raul, let us first and foremost talk about Dr. Mitchell's legacy. You are from St. George, North West, of course. What is the feeling? What is the sentiment for the people in St. George, North West, on the announcement from Dr. Mitchell that he's ready to finally hang up the hat?
Well, I think Dr. Mitchell was loved in St. George's Northwest. People appreciated his contribution. I mean, they kept voting for him in high numbers every election cycle. And he did have an impact, a solid impact on the community. You can't take that away from him regardless of what you think about his politics. And he did have a solid impact on Grenada in terms of Grenada's development at various junctures, at various points. That you also cannot take away from him, irrespective of how you feel about him or irrespective of how you feel about his politics. At that function on Thursday night, two scenarios were playing out. A celebration of Dr. Mitchell, a sort of celebration and a sort of tribute, if I may use that phrase, of him and his legacy, his contribution, what he has done, his achievement and his profile within the party, the constituency, and so on. And also the other scenario playing out is the potential leadership issue within NNP, because let us all face it, there is a leadership issue within NNP, and I'm not coming from a negative point of view, because we saw everybody gravitating around Adrian. He's a likable person, and he came up in that constituency in a different era from Dr. Mitchell, of course, because different ages and so on. But he came up as a humble boy within the community. You heard him calling out the name Nimrod Oliver. They played together. They grew up together. He called out Claudette. Claudette is an icon from Fontenoy, you know. And so the people you saw there celebrating and being happy with the heart and soul of Northwest. Those are the people that and they would be happy for him. So and they would support him because they saw him come up. And so what you're noticing is that he also, Adrian, having the backing of Dr. Mitchell and knowing the circumstance under which Emlyn came up as the new leader of NNP in the context of the convention and the controversy and Dr. Mitchell's obsession with keeping Peter David out. And then even within the context of NNP people themselves who don't necessarily see Emlyn as a leader per se or someone. I'm not knocking her. I'm just saying what they said, what they would have said. Of course, if you listen carefully, you hear some of them have apprehension in whether she can actually take the party, revive the party from the supported loss and carry it to victory into the next election. So what you will find happening is that based on Adrian's likability factor, he could potentially, and I'm saying potentially, he could potentially revive the NNP to some extent, especially in that Western corridor, and then people can potentially rally around him as a leader. So that could be an issue and a point to look at.
Yes, you're saying that they would rally around him as a leader, but I mean, you know, the Emlyn Pair, the Honorable Emlyn Pair, has much more experience than Mr. Dr. Joseph with respect to her service to the cabinet of the country, with respect to her service in frontline politics, with respect to her service with youth in Grenada. He does not necessarily assure that, you know, Dr. Joseph might have a very close connection with a close personal relationship with Dr. Mitchell, but that really does not say much about his ability to lead a political organization.
Right, and that's a good checkmate point. That's a good checkpoint where you checkmate it because, and even to add to that, Emlyn Pair has basically post-revolution and post the youth movement. She has made a big impact on the youth movement in Grenada. She was youth minister, and she had basically a very good program in terms of the Imani and all the different programs. So she has had a big impact on developing youth in Grenada. So I'm not taking anything away from her, but you have to look at different scenarios, and this is politics, and we all know there's no morality in politics. We all know people line up behind different people when interest is at stake. This is where I was going with it, because let's face it, irrespective of her attributes, and I would give her all her attributes, I wouldn't take anything away from her, because I think it's Dr. Mitchell himself who sabotaged Emlyn's sojourn and campaign in revamping the leadership movement. When he basically removed her as youth minister, that basically sabotaged her youth movement development campaign, because he reshuffled the cabinet at that point in time. And so she didn't have that portfolio and what she was doing in youth development. She basically didn't have any influence over that anymore, and so on. So I'm making the point to say, so I'm not taking anything away from Ms. Pair. I'm making the point to say, in the dynamics of politics and Grenada's politics, different issues and different influence come into play, and people gravitate around different people. And at this point in time, NNP is looking to rebuild, because let's face it, they suffered from Peter's pullout. They suffered from Peter's pullout, and Dr. Mitchell did not hand Emlyn Pair a decent, something decent. So basically, they are in rebuilding mode, right? And in the politics, we're going into an election here in that sort of dynamics. Lesser experienced persons could actually come through, depending on who pulls popular support. That's the speculative point I was making, not necessarily taking anything away from Ms. Pair.
So let us talk about Dr. Mitchell's legacy. Of course, you and I engaged with Dr. Mitchell in the media. I did, even though he does not, come on the Bubb Report, but that's neither here nor there. That does not affect my bottom line in any way. But let us talk about his overall legacy in the context of the constituency. You reference the constituency, and of course you reference his legacies in terms of national development in Grenada. Some might say that, his early work as Minister of Works, Communication and Works. I mean, they called him Stone for a reason between 84 and 89, 90, right? Because, he was a very instrumental in the rural electrification program, very instrumental in a lot of road infrastructure programs during the leadership, the prime ministership of Herbert Blaise. But let us talk about overall legacy. How would he be viewed? I mean, he was the longest serving. You cannot take that away from him. The longest serving prime minister of Grenada, the second longest serving head of government in the Caribbean after Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, I believe. The longest serving member of parliament, I believe it would be at this point, perhaps the Commonwealth Caribbean, right? So, his legacy in that respect is absolutely solid. Yes. So the question, Raul, is
well, yes, you are.
go ahead.
You are correct,
Yes.
and the longevity.
Yes.
Sorry, I think you're coming and going, but
the
longevity of Dr. Mitchell, having served so long, and he's a hard worker. He left Howard University, took a year of leave, and then he never went back. He stayed. But let's be fair, let's be honest, because I'm one of those who is his biggest critic in terms of his political style. But you have to give him the credit that he deserves in terms of pulling us out of a lot of problems in Grenada. And you made the point, and you see, generations must understand that. Third generations, if you go back 3 generations, ask the children, ask this generation, ask your parents or your grandparents, ask them when their grandparents were having to walk with 2 shoes in their hand, 2 pairs of shoes, because you have to go through the mud and then go by the standpipe and wash off your foot, and then put on the next shoes to take the bus, and so on. And Dr. Mitchell basically led that road construction so that communities, people can come out of their homes and go to get the buses and so on. So you don't have to take 2 and 3 shoes and that sort of thing. And of course, the rural electrification program and setting up all these communities with water and of course telephones and so on. So in terms of building the infrastructure, the foundation, his legacy is in place because he made a solid contribution to that. And there are a couple other things too in the 90s, I think, and a lot of people don't know these things. In the 90s, he reconfigured the taxation policy of Grenada. I think he removed a particular tax and he triggered a building boom. And the regional media was comparing Grenada to the OECS Tigers in comparison to, I think it was one of the Asian countries, the Asian Tigers, because that tax configuration by Dr. Mitchell triggered a building boom in the country. So that's another serious part of his contribution to Grenada. And of course, post-Hurricane Ivan, in terms of leading the development and the reconstruction, he played a critical role there. And then, of course, in 2013, when he bounced back, remember, under Tillman Thomas, and no disrespect to Tillman Thomas, he is a good man, under Tillman Thomas, NDC, Grenada basically imploded. We were basically selling assets to pay salaries. Salaries were always late. I don't know if people remember that. And when Dr. Mitchell NNP bounced back in 2013, they basically went to the IMF. They basically dictated the terms to the IMF because they say salvage about 3,000 public officers. IMF was saying they have to go, we have to cut. And they basically put a program together to reduce the debt. I think Kenny Lal Singh, a lot of people knock Kenny Lal Singh, but Kenny Lal Singh was head of that special committee to reduce the national debt, which was significantly reduced. Things were so bad, Grenada, by virtue of that performance under the Tillman Thomas NDC, had compromised a number of regional institutions. Twice, the CDB was downgraded because of Grenada, because of Grenada's non-compliance. And these are facts. That's not me with emotions liking or disliking anybody. This is me just looking at the facts. So Dr. Mitchell NNP had to revamp all of that and put Grenada back on track in terms of economy. As a matter of fact, I saw firsthand with my own eyes one of the ladies who headed a regional institution was compromised because of Grenada's inability to pay. Mm-hmm. I saw her hold on to Dr. Mitchell in that meeting, and she basically cried because Grenada came back and we resumed payments and we were fixing a lot of things that went wrong. I mean, I know some folks will say, well, the global economy contributing to that and so on. That might be so, but that's the situation. It was it is. So you have to give him his credit for the various points in which he lifted us, he led us out, and so on. I'm not always in agreement with some of his political style, and so he could be pretty ruthless politically. We all know that, and so on. But in terms of what he has done for Grenada and his legacy, you have to give him those credit for all the various things I just referred to in terms of his contribution to Grenada.
Of course, especially getting Grenada out of these particular crises, even navigating Grenada through that IMF structural adjustment program, which was, of course, a very challenging period. Yes. For Grenada as well. A lot of folks might have lost more jobs, but of course, on the other side of the coin, as you just referenced, one can argue that there is that legacy of ruthlessness as well. Did you hear that? The legacy
yes, of course, there is.
Yes, go ahead. Yes.
yes. Sorry, sometimes the call is dropping. But
yes.
His politics, right? His politics is what worked for him. But in the end, his politics didn't work for him. Sometimes as leaders, you have to know when to adjust, when to change, when to adapt, when to move on. Personally, I thought because he kept himself, approaching 80, but he was the fittest person, going to the gym, eating healthy, and so on. And I think he did well, and he could have carried on if he wanted to without anybody challenging him. But he was giving different signals. I'm going today, one for the road, and so on. So the climate that he created, the political climate that he created within NNP, is basically his fault. It's basically, you can't blame no one else. You can't blame Emlyn. You can't blame Peter. He has to, because he was the only one making noise. No one else in the lead up to the convention. He was the only one considered quarreling. And here I gave, and this is the thing about leadership. There's something called emotional intelligence, which is a solid attribute of leadership. I see it in Peter. I see it in Emlyn. As a matter of fact, I didn't realize that Emlyn is actually a lecturer in emotional intelligence. And perhaps that's the reason why she has been able to tolerate and deal with him, because essentially emotional intelligence is the ability to manage and control your emotions against all the adversities that you have to face. And you have to define her as strong, because dealing with a person that's politically ruthless as Dr. Mitchell, you have to have emotional intelligence to deal with him. Peter did it as well, because everybody was telling Peter, oh, you should hit back, you should make a statement, you should cuss him, but he didn't. He just controlled his emotion. And what happened? Dr. Mitchell was the only one carrying on with the histrionics and theatrics and so on. He was the only one doing it. And so that is an Achilles heel of him, and a particular weakness, because let's face it, we might be as strong as we are, but we all have our weaknesses. And sometimes our weakness undermines our strength. In this particular case, this is what he did to his party. He's a genius politician. Let's not take that away from him, because another point I want to make. And I'm not saying this negatively, as a black boy coming from poor circumstance, going to a PBC school, and a PBC school at that time, Dr. Bubb, which you would know, was more high complexion, high pigmentation, or maybe white people going to a PBC.
It was the domain of the Grenadian elite.
Yes, as a poor little black boy from Happy Hill going to that school, and what he would face, what he would experience. Let's be honest, that's trauma. That's trauma. How well he dealt with that trauma, I don't know. That's trauma, and if he didn't deal with that trauma, that's unhealed trauma. And it could well be that manifests himself into his evolution, and the type of person he is, in terms of his ego and in terms of his insecurities. And so that could have played out into his politics and affected him in terms of his relationship with people, his relationship with people with a higher complexion, his relationship with people who may be seen as a different classification to him. But he is a political genius, because what he did, he basically manipulated the classification of Grenada to pull support. Yes, he took the Gary vote, right, which was genius. And he also took, let's say, the upper class votes in Grenada because he manipulated a number of people who we may be seen as high complexion, high echelon, high class, and he got them in, and he got their vote, and he got them to go into parliament, right? I don't necessarily calling names because I don't want to make a negative point, but I have to make an intellectual point because it's a genius politics. This poor little black boy from Happy Hill who was able to outwit politically and maneuver the classes in Grenada to get people from the upper echelons to support him and bring in votes so that he could win a general election number of times and so on. So in all areas, those are his legacies. Those are the legacies of Dr. Claudius Mitchell, which you could define some of them as good, you could define some of them as bad or ruthless or whatever. That's his legacy, that's his record, and he stands on that as a politician. But overall, I think he gave a lot to Grenada. Arguably, one could argue maybe more than some of the other politicians on the virtue of his longevity and what he has done. You look at the country and you look at development, even around St. George's. A lot of people tend to say, well, nothing can happen in St. George's, nothing can happen in St. George's. And I look around and I say, but St. George's has a ministerial complex, has a new parliament building, has a cruise ship terminal, the same cruise ship terminal that some people were objecting to and cussing and crawling, that created jobs for so many people. Port Louis Marina, St. George's has had so much development. St. George's, and yes, the South has had a lot of development as well, but a lot has happened in the town of St. George, right? So you have to say thank you to him for what he has done for Grenada, like him or not, like his politics or not. You have to appreciate him. Yes, he's a public figure and he is subject to public scrutiny and public criticism, but as he rides off into the sunset, well, not necessarily in his private life, because he's still maintaining a political posture. He says he wants to stay on, and his mission now is to get rid of NDC. So let's see how that plays off.
Let's see how that will pan out. But I suppose he would also have to swat Peter David's movement as well while he's doing that. But Rolf, finally, the political tea leaves now with respect to Dr. Adrian Joseph. Now, I've heard from many circles that Dr. Joseph has many of the same interpersonal qualities as Mr. Peter David, that he can have the same crossover appeal that MP David had over the years, right? So Peter David, as Member of Parliament for the town of St. George, who served both in the NDC and in the NNP, a lot of people voted for him irrespective of his affiliation with either of those parties. Does Dr. Joseph have the same qualities?
Right. So full disclosure, before I comment, let me say, Adrian and I, we are family, we are cousins, we are children, our grandparents are brothers and sisters. So that's blood there. So let me throw that out for full transparency.
Full transparency. Okay, very well.
But I heard him say, because I remember a lot of people didn't know, he was always the kind of guy who will help his community, over the years, even before politics and that sort of thing, even growing up. So people know him like that. And I heard him said, I think it was last December when he was handing out gifts to people and so on and children. He said, I'm not watching face. You could be NNP, you could be NDC. So if he can stick to that, that's good. And I personally, I like the unity thing. I like the unity thing. It is possible he could have crossover appeal, because remember, he was approached by a lot of the other organizations wanted him too. I'm seeing people who commenting favorable on him from different colors. We see a different, whether it's NNP, whether it's NDC, whether it's movement, different people gravitating to him. So it's quite possible. If that is the case, then that is actually good, because I like the unity thing, quite frankly. I like to see politicians get together. It's challenging, really. Sometimes we knock them and we have to criticize them because they control policy. They decide who eat and who don't eat, and they share resources. So we have to criticize them. They're more equal than us. But we have to understand it. We have to understand too, because some of them are genuine, really. They are trying, and then circumstance change things, and then they screw up. So I personally hope he stays that way. like I said, I like politicians who do that. That is why I was complimentary of Delma and Chantiglo. When they came together, everybody was criticizing them, right? So because they're NDC, because Delma went to another party. I mean, why is everybody criticizing that? People do that every day. People party hop. That happens. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So she went to the NDC. She had a good relationship with Miss Gloria Thomas, and they were doing a lot of good things. I admire that. So if politicians could work together, could do things together, and come together and help the constituents, I support that 100%, regardless of who the politician is. So if Dr. Joseph shows that sort of collaboration, to help people, regardless of their political color, and to work across party lines, I like that. And this is something I feel more and more politicians need to do, work together, rally around a development agenda. So for instance, you have in Northwest, that's my territory, you have Fontana, Grand Mall, Cherry, Mount Morris, Happy, wherever. If Dr. Joseph working with, I don't know, whoever is the NDC candidate, or let's say the movement candidate, they work together on a development agenda. This is what we need. We need in the community. We need this, we need that, we need this support in housing, we need this program for development for children, we need this kind of a support, and they could work together fine, as opposed to saying, okay, my party in power, those people in Stonehill supporting me, is only they that could get. Those people in Fountain are not supporting me, they ain't getting nothing. I can't subscribe to that. So I hope he walks along the path of unity and the path of collaboration.
And I think it's clear
I do wish him all the best where that is concerned.
And Raul, finally, as we get to the next segment, on a more, I suppose, on a more personal note now, Dr. Mitchell, of course, made history in Grenada. And of course, you mentioned our alma mater, the Presentation Brothers College, the best academic institution in Grenada. I have a bias here, but they say that the Presentation College should be called the Prime Minister's factory from Grenada. But let us talk about finally his legacy in sports and really his legacy for for extracurricular activities and education, finally.
Well, yes, he did have a passion for that. Remember, whenever he traveled overseas too, he always used to come back, and when he had the news conferences, he get scholarships here from this country, from that country. So because of his passion in education, he had a passion for people being educated, the education of people, and so this is why you will find scholarship was something he will always include on his agenda when he went to these international meetings and so on, and he come back and so on. So that the education was a crucial part of his legacy. I would say that first and foremost, and overall, I think because don't forget too what he did as well. He actually went and teaches in some of the schools. Don't forget he did that. His legacy in sports as well is also documented, because remember he had the Prime Minister's 11 against some of the other teams, and he was actually playing cricket. And even as Prime Minister, playing cricket with different teams around the country, and also commentating. Don't forget too, in the early days, he used to come on and commentate. So his passion for sports around the country, especially cricket, he represented Grenada in cricket. I don't think football, cricket, which was his passion, and he had a knowledge of it. And of course, that also played out on the regional level when West Indies cricket team and the West Indies structure was in a lot of trouble. He was part of working with Vivian and Richard and that special committee. Don't forget that special committee to help fix West Indies cricket. They went to the late Sir Royston Hopkins Hotel where one of the meetings took place when Dr. Mitchell was helping to using his expertise and knowledge of cricket to help the West Indies cricket team. So his legacy in sports goes across international, across regional, and across local as well. You can't take that away from him.
Raul, thank you so much for appearing on the Bubb Report this week. And of course, we here at the Bubb Report, we wish Dr. Mitchell all the very best in his golden years. We do hope that he will continue to render service not only in the political arena, but render service in other areas that he has expertise in. Dr. Mitchell and I not only share the distinction of being PBC alum, but we also alum of the great HU, Howard University, here in the DC area. So, Raul, we'll be having a full-throated political panel sometime in February to talk about all of the political happenings in Grenada. We're hearing that there might be an election on the horizon in February. I don't know. That's what I'm hearing. But we'll read those tea leaves and so on. So, Raul, thank you so much for appearing on the Bubb Report this week.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
All right, viewers and listeners, of course, that was Raul Titus, my media colleague there, Raul Titus, talking about Dr. Mitchell's legacy and as he rides into the political sunset, as well as the emergence of Dr. Adrian Joseph, his successor in the St. George North West Constituency. So we're going to take a break and come back for the second segment of the program. Please stand by for that.
Some not be contesting any election. And I think it's clear that people know this. But they can't leave me alone. Every time I say some Bubb Report, every time you hear some discussion, people that you don't know have no connection with me. They don't know me. They're talking about me. You don't even know me. You never talk to me. We never had any relationship. But they have to talk about me. Keep talking about me. Make me relevant when I don't want to be relevant. Keep doing it. I love that. I love when I see it. I laugh. I have fun when I see them talking about me and I don't even know them. Fellas I don't know, they're talking about me. They know me better than, and they never discuss anything. They never had any discussion. We had no relationship. But they know me better than myself. Interesting. So I repeat, the grape story. The grape is sour.
Well, I was about to wrap up.
You can wrap up still over there.
But before we go, right?
Are settling down. Right? But every minute, they putting me on the papers. And they putting me on the papers with a nice woman. And they hope like I get vexed. Put it again next week, man. I put it again. Aye, man. Hey, they don't understand. That is man. What do they? Hey, put it, George, put it again next.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity.
And folks, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Of course, if you're just joining us, please welcome to the stream. And of course, for those of you already here, just give us a like and subscribe. If you're over on YouTube, just hit that subscribe bell for us so that the algorithm can do its thing. And what we want to do now is to get into the second segment of the program, where we will be discussing travel and tourism in Grenada. Now, Grenada headed into 2025 on a wave of 26 straight months of tourism growth, a streak that began in September of 2022. Now, milestones have followed in rapid succession for the island nation, now including surpassing 20,000 monthly arrivals for the first time in December 2023, according to the Grenada Tourism Authority. Now, and the numbers keep growing. To meet this rising demand, Grenada is expanding its luxury tourism infrastructure. Now, recent and upcoming developments include, of course, the Six Senses in La Sagesse, the Silver Sands Beach House, and the soon-to-launch Intercontinental Grenada Resort, while the Calabash Hotel is preparing to unveil 6 new convenient ocean view suites in early this year. Now, as former Tourism Authority CEO Petra Roach explained, sustainability is at the core of Grenada's tourism strategy. That vision was front and center when Grenada hosted the Caribbean Tourism Association's Sustainable Tourism Conference in 2024, positioning the island as a regional leader in eco-conscious development. Now, the island also previously received the CTO's Destination Resilience Award in 2022, honoring its innovative and timely pandemic response that wove sustainability into the recovery process. Now, over the years, Grenada has launched numerous forward-thinking initiatives. In 2018, the Non-Biodegradable Waste Control Act banned styrofoam and single-use plastics. In 2020, the Grenada National Trust published the Grenada Heritage Book, Preserving the Island's Cultural Assets. In 2024, Grenada expanded its iconic Molineux Underwater Sculpture Park with the new Coral Carnival collection and introduced the Carriacou Underwater Sculpture Park, both designed to support marine ecosystems. Grenada is also rapidly emerging as a premier Caribbean carnival destination, driven by the intense, authentic cultural experience of Spice Mass in August. And this growth has also brought with it a huge demand for accommodation on the island. Here to discuss travel tourism in the face of an international travel advisory, I'm joined by Zoe Smith, who is a travel consultant. We also have with us today Dr. Robert Moss, who is an American expat in Grenada. I suppose he now calls Grenada home. We also have Mr. Elvis Lewis, who is the president of the Grenada Hotel and Tourism Association. And of course, my former PBC classmate, schoolmate, not classmate. I have to make that correction. Class of 97 always will be. Randy Dolland, who is, of course, the chairman of the Grenada Tourism Authority. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Bubb.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to begin, before I get to Mr. Dolland and Mr. Lewis, I want to begin with Ms. Smith and Dr. Moss about, of course, Dr. Ross, yes. I want to begin with you, ladies and gentlemen, to have a conversation about the unique selling proposition of Grenada in this period and the work that you've been doing, as though you've done a lot of work around the Exodus Collective, and I believe your marketing is very niche in the sense that it really attracts people of color, right? And of course, Dr. Ross, is a person of color. So Zoe, I want to begin with you. Let us talk about Grenada's unique selling proposition in the context of attracting people of African descent in the diaspora to Grenada.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a long-time fan of the show.
Thank you.
When it comes to Grenada, I don't really, because I'm not in the tourism space, I don't feel it as an island that can be sold. I feel Grenada is what it is, and either it resonates with people or it doesn't. So people, you're trying to encourage people to come here. I don't. Either you get it or you don't. But I think for those who do get it, and what's interesting is that I started work. Is that my background noise? I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm getting some background noise there. Are you close to a beach?
No, I wish. No.
Okay. Okay, but go ahead. We will work through it.
Yeah, I started this work around the time of the pandemic, and I thought it would die down when everyone got called back to work, but it hasn't. And I think the geopolitical instability around the world, especially the political tensions in North America and in Europe, is what is encouraging Black folks to seek sanctuary elsewhere. So the juxtaposition of the US, all places.
Yeah. I'm not too sure what's happening there, Zoe. If you perhaps want to determine what's happening, we're going to put you backstage a bit, and I'll get my producer to touch base with you, and we'll figure that out. Okay? Yeah. But Dr. Ross, welcome to the Bubb Report here. So talk to us, Dr. Ross. You and I share the distinction of being HBCU graduates. You at Morehouse. You're a Morehouse man. You are a Morehouse man, sir. So, so let us talk about why Grenada. How did you find out about Grenada, and what attracted you to the island?
Right. Well, as I was approaching retirement age, I began to explore a lot of different areas around the world as the were to sort of settle as I did that. And it so happened, I'd gone to Cuba, Barbados, Belize, several countries in Europe and stuff. But back in 2024, I was on YouTube and somehow happened upon the Exodus Collective. And I saw Zoe and her presentations, and they were sort of non dressed up. She just
Right.
told it like it was, and with all the warts and the acne scars and everything else to go along with it. So I decided to call her. We talked, and I made a visit to Grenada, and I stayed about 10, 12 days in Moulin Rouge, and I really liked what I saw. I liked the pace of life, having grown up in the rural South during the Jim Crow era, and what was going on since shortly after Obama was elected and the political changes in the United States. The fact that my youngest son had gotten his PhD and no longer needed his father around as somewhat of a shepherd. And the fact is that my house, I lived in Pacific Palisades in California. My house burned down in January. And just a month before, Zoe and I had been talking about my coming back to Grenada. So with my house gone, my kids doing their own things, and no place to stay, I decided to come to Grenada. And so as I did so, I just been in Southern Africa because I saw that Trump was sort of gaining steam within the electorate, and I decided this place is not for me anymore. It resembled my growing up in South Georgia. And that was pretty much it in a nutshell.
I'm glad you referenced the current political environment, because there is a podcast that I follow as well. It's called Blexit Global. And really, it speaks to the number of African Americans who have left the United States following the rise of this authoritarian dictator that we have in the United States now. And I would share this quick anecdote. I always say to people, the first time that I experienced racism was when I immigrated to the United States. And I remember the exact moment it happened and the microaggressions that I had to deal with from a white woman. They call them Karens. And that was the decision. And it was at that point that I made the decision that I wanted to have an HBCU experience, which is what led me to Howard University. So, of course, everything that's happening now, of course, is not only domestic politics, but that domestic politics has spilled over into geopolitics. And now we see this quote unquote travel advisory against Grenada. So I want you to pick up on that and why African Americans in particular are deciding to leave the United States and find safe havens like Grenada. Because again, in our heads, the idea of a tourist or the idea of an expat is some white person wearing a coconut hat with a Hawaii shirt, sipping on a margarita.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. Let us talk about why people are leaving to find spaces like Grenada.
Well, I think there are various reasons. One, recognizing the political situation in the United States, as well as the cost of living. It's incredible. There are a lot of people now, have businesses that they can take anywhere on the world via their laptops and do that. I think early on, say like in the early teens, Portugal was sought out as a place to go. I was there about 3 years ago, and they had nothing, no sign, no stone, no obelisk or anything, recognizing that Portugal had achieved its wealth through stealing of enslaved people from West Coast of Africa and other things. And so clearly Portugal was on my list, but when I saw that, I decided this is not a place for Black people. And I think a lot of Blacks who have moved there are sort of feeling that it's not a place for them. I've also, learned that a lot of Blacks in America have gone to West Africa and they're finding out it's not the place for them either. I think sometimes we carry around with us this sort of stylized image of what it's like to return to the mother country. But, a few hundred years have gone between our ancestors being stolen from there and taken to the States or to the Caribbean. But so I think there are multiple reasons for people leaving, but the bulk of American Blacks stay in America. I think they really hope and pray that this country is going to one day recognize them, but it is never going to be the case from my perspective. I see how the world has almost gone back to the outlines of Jim Crow. Vis-a-vis Black people in the country. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Zoya, I'll bring you back. Let's see if it's much better. Yes, it's much better. Yes. So I want you to pick up on everything that that Dr. Ross just articulated here, and the kinds of communication that you have. Of course, you also have a social media presence. So I suspect, as Dr. Ross just articulated, he reached out to you, and I suspect others like him are doing the same.
Yes. I mean, yeah, as I was saying, I started documenting my journey because I'm a former journalist, and I think telling alternative stories is really important. I think, as you're saying, the idea of the typical person who comes to Grenada or who lives in Grenada from overseas is someone who has tons of money, is retired, and that isn't necessarily the case. Lots of us who are relatively younger come, set up businesses, buy property, invest. And I think in terms of developing the island in a way that isn't extractive, that is less sensitive to geopolitical tensions, getting people who actually want to invest in Grenada and not just to extract is something that I find quite curious. And as I started telling my story and telling the stories of others who'd also returned to other islands around the Caribbean, more and more people started reaching out. And even when in the so-called global north, people started getting pulled back to the office, others were like, no, like this isn't working for us. I want to be elsewhere. I want to be somewhere safe. I want to be somewhere where people actually say hello to me in the morning, where I can let my children run in the streets without worrying they're going to be kidnapped, where I can leave my purse without worrying I'm going to get mugged or get it stolen. And I think in terms of quality of life, Grenada really, I'm biased, but I think it's streets above so many other places. And as I was saying before, the sound issues, what's interesting is that this advisory has come from the United States, of all places. And I actually have a couple who are due to move here in 2 weeks' time from Minnesota. And the reason that they fast forwarded their transition is exactly because people are getting shot in the streets by the state. So the irony of a state warning that Grenada is unsafe to travel, where it's unsafe for their citizens to even walk down the street is very curious to me. But the sad thing is that this seems to be a trend globally. I mean, not globally, but in particular countries, in the UK as well. We're moving more and more to the right. I'm having more and more, not just Grenadians, but folks from the wider Caribbean diaspora want to understand what their citizenship options are, want to understand what their options are within CARICOM CSME in terms of establishing businesses. So I feel that while the focus definitely is on tourism, there is also a significant market who want to have a more permanent or more regular base in the Caribbean, and those are the types of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put you backstage again, put you folks backstage again, and then I'll bring in Mr. Lewis and Mr. Dolan here to have a conversation more so about where we are currently. You guys just heard Zoe here talk about just moving beyond the traditional tourism marketing that we do to focus on these very niche areas. So, Mr. Dolan, I want to begin with you in looking at those niche areas and the niche opportunities for Grenada as a tourist destination. What is the Tourism Authority doing to do that?
Well, first of all, special good morning to you, my fellow PVC alum. I'm class of 98, you're 97. And again, special welcome to my fellow the others on the program, and as well as all of your listeners and viewers around the world. So again, I'd like to start with the fact that Grenada has always marketed itself as a really, truly authentic Caribbean destination. We have never been a mass market destination. And you see that in the sort of resort and accommodations that we do have available on the island. The fact is we take a more holistic approach to development here in Grenada, right? Because you have to be part and parcel of the much larger picture. And our approach with the Tourism Authority is that holistic approach has to be intertwined with all the other developments that is happening along the island, along the destination. I would start with saying that Grenada has always been and continues to maintain an impeccable safety record compared to all of the other Caribbean neighbors, right? The fact that Grenada is in fact a very safe place, as the stats will absolutely prove that. And the region has always been, a zone of safety until that little bit of a disruption very recently. But then again, we see a lot of things happening around the world that we sit here and scratch our heads about, what's the reason for some of these things happening. But all of that is to say that, the stability that Grenada offers is indeed almost second to none when you compare us to other Caribbean islands. When we take out the approach of tourism, it's a collective approach because, again, we don't offer a mass market product. We cater more so to the visitor who is looking for that destination off the beaten path. That destination that it doesn't appeal to the visitors that you just described, right? With the straw hat and the flower,
the pina colada and the flower and
looking for a pina colada. That's not the destination that we sort of appeal to. The sort of the demographic that we appeal to. We definitely appeal to that more sophisticated traveler, that traveler who is looking for that more authentic experience. And then you have, the accommodations that come up to support it. When we go after those visitors are usually the more high net worth, more affluent visitors who would then think about, we can look at retiring here. How do we ultimately decide that, we can move to Grenada, we could easily raise our kids here, start a business here, and retire in peace here, right? And that's when you look at the much larger infrastructural development that is occurring on Grenada, you sort of see that, right? When you consider the importance of the Project Polaris initiative, that project where we are building a new world-class health system in Grenada with Mount Sinai, which is the most reputable partner in the world, that is to help increase the retirees, second home individuals, and just more individuals to come back where you can live in Grenada very safely and have the best availability to healthcare system. Right, you look at little things like the water project, initiative that's happening now to ensure that there's water properly, distributed throughout the state of Grenada. The fixing of our road network that's going to be coming. All these things are part and parcel of stronger growth, stronger development. We're looking at going back into agriculture, making heavy investments in that, and of course to our fishing industry, because I will always say this: that tourism in Grenada, it's not just about sipping a pina colada on Grand Beach. It's about getting into the country. The resort is the country. That's what you're paying for. That's why you're coming here, not to really sit down behind the walls of the hotel for your entire stay, but it's to really enjoy the destination. And one of the strongest selling points that we have on the destination is the people. Our people resources, our culture. That is what you see resonating a lot of times with that sort of visitors. They're not looking for that sort of regular tourist trap experience, but this is what Grenada speaks to. And now we're looking at, bringing on more investments in the tourism sector with new developments coming on stream, more boutique resorts. And that is strengthening Grenada's position ultimately as a premier destination, because we can now stand and we really have something to stand on when we speak about, what we do have to offer. And again, that resonates with those who are looking for an exit, to actually, leave the United States or wherever they are coming from, to come to this peaceful destination where, there's now a renewed focus on healthcare, education, and food security, as well as being, of course, one of the most naturally beautiful Caribbean destinations in the region, and especially with being a tri-island state with Carriacou and Petit Martinique there. I mean, the beauty here and access to the Grenadines, our geographical positioning, is absolutely second to none.
Absolutely. Let me bring in Mr. Lewis. Mr. Lewis, I believe this is your first time on the Bubb Report. Your predecessor appeared on the program several times, so it's good to have another a person here from the association. But let us talk about where we are. You heard the other folks here, and I want you to talk about from a GHTA perspective. What is the current forecast looking like for you all?
Dr. Bubb, thank you for having me on the program. I truly appreciate it.
Yes.
And, so I'm going to echo some of the things that some of the other panelists have already said. I want to first touch on that level 2 advisory, which seems to be dominating the conversation for tourism in Grenada. I'm going to look at it from two perspectives.
Yes.
From the government standpoint and the association standpoint, we've made statements that address what this level 2 is about and what it's not about. And probably most importantly of all, it's a non-issue. Let me give you some statistics. Turks and Caicos has been under level 2 advisory since 2023. Bahamas since 2024. Jamaica has been level 3, level 2, and it's still on a level 2. The Dominican Republic is level 2. And these are some islands in the Caribbean that have the largest segment of American tourists visiting them. We don't hear them talking about it. So it's like your house is on fire. Are you going to add fuel to it? So I think we need to stop talking about level 2. What we need to start talking about is the message that Grenada is safe, we're friendly, we're authentic. It's a beautiful Caribbean experience. It diffuses level 2 because it really has no impact on the American traveler wanting to travel or any other tourists from the segments of the market that we target, Europe, Canada, etc. So I think we need to leave level 2 alone. I think it's dominating our conversation. I would encourage Grenadian influencers, podcasters, and people to just leave that alone. It's you're adding, once you keep that message alive, it's sort of
add fuel to the fire.
It does. And then
in a way,
we need to get away from that. Let's focus on who we are, what we offer. And it's tranquility, beaches, waterfalls, nutmeg, cocoa, chocolate. Pleasant people you can talk to, safe. You can walk the streets at night. Okay, so that's my level 2 response to that.
Yes.
Earlier you said something about the statistics of where we were in reference to the amount of visitors coming to Grenada. We had a banner year previously, and we've actually dropped off a little bit. Actually, 2025 has been a banner year for Grenada in tourism. We had a drop in stayover visits, which is true. And there are many.
I was about to reference that, but you picked up on that. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So, we had a drop in stayover visits, and that is understandably because we lost JetBlue out of Boston as a direct flight. We had lost an Air Canada flight, which we've now gotten back on. We lost Condor. So when airlift takes away from us, and there are many reasons why they do, and that'll be a long conversation. But in fact, if you look at the numbers from 2019 to 2025, Grenada has had about an 8% increase in visitors coming to the island. Now, Beryl affected Carriacou significantly, which hosts a significant yachting community during the hurricane season because Grenada was considered sort of a little safe haven. Carriacou had a drop in about 44% in visitation of yachts, combination Grenada and Carriacou. So that dropped the numbers a bit. But in fact, Grenada is on par again for 2026 based on every model that we've seen through the GTA, through GHTA and marketing and the numbers that our association members have been presenting based on surveys that we've been conducting within our membership, that 2026 will even be bigger than the previous year, which was the biggest one of 2024. So hopefully we'll see some beautiful things happening in Grenada.
Very well. So the numbers speak for themselves. I do want to, however, talk about, bring back you and bring back Mr. Dolan here, to talk about areas of challenge and opportunities for improvement in the sector. You hear a lot, especially, I mean, that is one of my biggest pet peeves in Grenada. And this has nothing to do, don't call me JCB or call me anything like that. Customer service is a serious issue. I'm not too sure what that looks like in the confines of hotels, but once you get out of the hotel ecosystem, and you go to named X local restaurant, you say you want to get that authentic local feel, and you ask somebody, well, you know, you want to get that particular item, or you don't have, what you want me to do? That sort of thing. I'm sorry, but and then some of those folks are just rude and onerous, and they seem to think, again, it goes back to this stereotypical notion of what a tourist is, that someone like me, they're going to be mean to someone that looks like me, but someone that looks like someone from Minnesota, they will treat them like a king or a queen. So let us talk about those areas of opportunity, especially in the context of customer service. Randy.
Absolutely. So, well, I'd just like to also, before I continue, just add some more context again with what Director Lewis, or also my director, what President Lewis, you know, President of the GHTA would have mentioned, right? So, yeah, we did have some attrition in airlift in the beginning of 2024, but we fact that, you know, sorry, in 2025, but we now, you know, with the last half of the year, airlift actually surpassed, the arrivals surpassed our previous banner year of 24. Right. And again, as he mentioned, 2026, this year, is expected to be the new banner year with increasing airlift, increasing cruise and everything else that, you know, we're already pushing. We're 8% up. And a lot of that has to be attributed to the fact that we have a better sustained airlift now going forward, where the airlines are happy, they're making money in the sense that their yields are good and the flights are profitable. Grenada benefits as well. But going back to the notion of customer care and customer service,
which should be part and parcel of the tourism product,
which is
right.
And so, so we launched a program for that, right? The Pure Grenada Excellence Training Program, right? That's an initiative directly from the GTA, directly to address this, and it was free, right? We're paying for it. We hired the consultant, Eddie Frederick, and we will go along to different resorts and especially the small boutique resorts, right, was the main target in addition to the larger ones. So the idea was to get all of them in the room, and what we'll have is just training on the level of why you're showing up to work, the ethos of, you know, you showing up, the reason you're showing up, and providing that care. And one of the most important parts of those conversations and that training was the fact that hospitality starts at home, because you do not know who is a tourist, and it doesn't matter. If you're open
it
for
should
business,
not matter, because Grenadians
it should never matter.
Should have the same experience.
Once you're open for business, you have to, you know, provide that professional service. We always hear that Grenada is we're the friendliest people in the region, but we're not the most professional. So a lot of times it's not okay to speak to your visitors and your customers that way. But we have been pushing this training now for almost 3 years. And we continue to push, we continue to make more strides in it. We actually are now doing the trainers element of it, so we could actually scale the program. And then of course offer that training more holistically across all Tri-Island State. The program, as a matter of fact, started in Caracou. So we're trying to touch every location, every parish also, and ensure that most people there are pretty much trained up. Or we continue to invest in this program. And I know that the GHTA also had other initiatives that they were working on that, you know, President Lewis could continue to expand on. But that is a key part of the development, because we ultimately have to be ready. I know the Prime Minister also has a skill training initiative that's also coming on stream very shortly. They're working on that now. And that's also to scale, you know, not just the technical part, but, you know, how you open more hospitality schools where individuals get that better coaching. So all those things are in work, they're in stream. And we understand the importance of it because, you know, service does go a long way.
Yes, Mr. Lewis, same question. Customer service, the service experience. You can't hear me?
I can hear you very clearly.
Okay,
I can't hear. My mic, it keeps cutting out.
So but go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
Well, you know, customer service is always a key issue in tourism. It's the bedrock of it. We have challenges in Grenada on that, no question about it. Just as the chairman has just mentioned, GTA did its 3-year program with the customer service excellence training. GHTA also has done 2 different levels of training, which sort of covers specific areas in the hospitality industry because we view it that every level of tourism, from management to the server, if you want to say at the bottom tier of that tourism structure, needs to be trained and retrained continuously. Attitude is something that you really can't teach, but you can try. And we're fully aware that we do have some challenges there, and we're working on it. There's no ready fix for it. It will take time for the idea, the process, the whole rethinking of what this is to take place. And one of the things we're doing at the GHTA to help that is last year we launched the inaugural hospitality camp. You know, many years ago, there was a saying in Grenada, tourism is everybody's business. It is. We're one of the key pillars for the GDP of Grenada. So we have to ensure that we can sustain it in such a manner that it keeps generating revenue by having people to come here. And people will come here if they get good service, because they'll refer us to other people, and that will continue the flow of traffic. So the hospitality camp, what we did was, we want to change the older thinking folks that are sort of moved on, and we want to capture young people for them to understand the value of this business. So we went into the high schools, and we had principals select one student from our 24 high schools in the Tri-Island state. We brought them to the mainland, housed them, and had them experience different aspects of the hospitality business throughout a variety of our resorts, small hotels, large hotels, etc. They were amazed. If you saw the reaction of these young people's faces and understanding the tourism industry from a Grenadian perspective is not the laborer or the person who's making the bed or the person who's just walking around with a tray serving drinks. It's about IT management. It's about front office management. It's about becoming a general manager, becoming a chef versus a cook. So we have to change that. You know, we have to let young Grenadians realize they have an opportunity to be more than what the envision of what it was before. So we're doing that, and we're going to do it again in 2026, and we're going to keep doing it. So we're fully aware of the challenges in customers. I love when you said how the person reacts in language. When
the language, and even the non-verbals, they roll their eye, they put their hand on their waist, and it's like,
Bubb, listen.
What is JCB doing here?
So when I moved back to Grenada,
my accent has not changed since I left Grenada. So
I moved back to Grenada 11 years ago, and I still get that reaction as the JCB thing. So it's just getting people to realize, come on, guys, this is service. And I think it's very rewarding when you realize you can take care of someone. You feel better about yourself as a service-oriented business. And then you can also encourage your coworker to have that same experience. It precipitously gets into everybody's kind of way of being. So it elevates our product. So we are working on it. It will take some time, but it's happening both on the GTA level and GHTA. So we're very cognizant of that fact.
Yeah. Mr. Dolan, I'm not sure if you can hear me now. You can hear me again? Yes, I think it's a connectivity issue. But let's get to some I suppose, comments for you two gentlemen here, and then we'll bring back the rest of, we'll bring back Dr. Ross and Zoe again. But we have a comment here. Somebody saying it's really not that safe. People are being constantly harassed, especially by these bums in the town of St. George area. The RGPF and the tourism authorities have to do better. It's really not safe, I guess, in that context. Maybe that's person's experience. Panhandling, I suppose, and things like that in the town of St. George. I'm not sure if is that something that's on your radar at the GTA?
We try to limit a lot of that on the Grand Isles Beach area.
Okay.
I mean, there's a reason why the vendors market exists. But, especially, panhandling, as you just mentioned, or even just being more aggressive with visitors when they arrive to, hustle them to a seat or buy a drink. We're really cracking down on that and making sure that the experience is seamless, because it doesn't want to feel harassed when you arrive at a destination. But again, when you look at, in terms of crime, specifically in terms of crime, Grenada statistically still remains, a very, very safe destination. But of course, we could always go the extra mile and always do a little bit more to ensure that the visitor experience is always good. And of course, with the comment made about the harassment, individuals walking up, these are things that we could always look to improve where we sort of, get rid of that. And I know that moving forward, as we look to, build out the town of St. George, get the fort up and running, all of these sort of ad hoc tour guide, all of these things will have to start getting cleaned up. So the experience for any visitor would be more seamless.
Mr. Lewis, what advice when guests come to your hotel about, do you give to them about, I don't want to use avoiding areas because I don't think Grenada has any no-go area. I take great exception when I hear there was this particular Canadian vlogger who came to Grenada, and I was so offended. Is this white Canadian guy, Christmas list or whatever? And then he went up on 4 Roads and he said, no, 4 Roads is a no-go area and all of that. And I got offended because I grew up on 4 Roads, right? So that aside, what advice do you give to visitors, or what do you hear from visitors really about some of the perhaps more untoward experiences that they've had?
So I think those are very small, isolated cases, and let's not blow something out of proportion, okay?
Yeah.
I give you an experience. So when people check in at our hotel, personally, we tell them a few simple things. Just like you travel anywhere in the world, don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to be in quote unquote a bad area of the town or city. You have to be cognizant of your surroundings. So we tell people something like this, the statement, listen, there's crime, and it's crime of opportunity. If you leave your purse open on the beach, and let's say someone who's not of quote unquote reputable character passes by and he sees it open and he sees a cell phone, he'll pick it up and go with it. But we tell, don't do that. Be aware of your surroundings. Make sure your doors are locked. Grenadians, if they turn a knob on a door trying to go into somebody's house and it's locked, they're going to walk away. If it's open, they're going to come in because you're inviting them in. It's just a Grenadian thing, okay? But it's not that people are hassling people or people are going out to harass tourists. I mean, we tell people when they walk the street and the guys in the local rum shops yell at them and say, hi, I'm doing fine. You respond to a local Grenadian, they will respect you for it. If you're on the side of the road and you've been drinking rum for the day, which is part of our cultural environment, and you ignore them and they start yelling back at you, can you fault them for not respecting them in their own country? In St. George's, the guys who look for people to give them a walking tour, okay, we need to fix that. We need to put them under an umbrella of where the GTA and the GHTA can collaboratively make sure they're licensed properly and they approach the visitor with the right kind of decorum that will allow the visitor to say, okay, this is good. I can get a walking tour of the city. These are isolated. I really won't put any credence in any of that. And if someone who's making a comment online right now has experienced that, send it into the GTA. Send it into GHTA. Say this is when it happened. We can go out and find that person possibly and talk to them about it. But just to put arbitrary statements out there, what's the point? I mean, what's the point?
Yeah, but I suppose for that particular viewer, that statement might not be arbitrary. I mean, that's a personal experience that they had.
So you engage the person, you say, hi, I'm sorry, I don't need it. And they may persist. You're in a tourist country. Any tourist island you go to in the Caribbean, anywhere in the world, you're going to get people trying to engage you. It's local sort of activity and trying to get someone. You want to make a buck or two, so you're going to ask them, can I give you a tour? Can I walk with you? Can I tell you about Grenada? So again, there are always 3 sides to a story. We know yours, theirs, and the truth. So it's possible that person's reaction could have been so negative to the way the person approached them versus engaging them differently, and you change the whole paradigm of
dynamic. The whole dynamic of that interaction. Yeah, absolutely. Let me bring back Zoe and Dr. Ross here. So Zoe, you've just heard these conversations we're having here about people's experiences while on the island. But let us talk about, again, some of the people that you have engaged with. What has their experience been like? Some of them, of course, who are engaging in more longer stays in Grenada.
Yeah, no, the point about customer service definitely made me smile.
Yes.
I think my take is if customer service is something that's exceptionally important to you and you find it very triggering, you might want to consider other destinations, because the culture is what the culture is. And clearly there's a journey to be moved along, but it moves at its own pace. And you're coming to an island that exists. It's not here just to please you. So I think it's important that we're honest about Grenadians, about our ups and our downs, and to recognize that some of our downs people from elsewhere might find challenging, and the process of us moving through that might be a little slow. So I mean, I get asked for money often from some of the men here. I'm like, you probably have more money than me, or like, next time when I have money, okay. I mean, I don't take it personally, and I think your point of answering people back, it's just so that you're not ignoring them. I think that can like minimize some of the hassle. But I definitely feel, for me, because I work with people who are exploring multiple Caribbean destinations, the sort of person who comes to Grenada is really looking for quality of life, is really looking for a place where they can be at peace. I often find that if you have a very low boredom threshold, Grenada might not necessarily be the place for you. If you want next day Amazon Prime deliveries, if you want cinemas and malls, to be constantly entertained, Grenada probably isn't going to be the place that will bring you peace. But if you are content with like great people, great conversation, being in nature, moving at a much slower pace, having the beach to yourself, I think those are the sort of things that appeal to people who come here. And I think one of the things that I have as someone who has a background in international development is that while tourism can be a fantastic driver of growth, in order for it to be sustainable, if it feels like there are, really expensive high-end hotels being built and mega yachts coming in and people with lots and lots of money, but none of that is trickling down to the ordinary people on the ground, I think that's where resentment and misunderstanding can build. And then that's when, there become more tension. So one of the things that I often say is that I'm sure Trinidad was once a really lovely tropical island, but after decades and decades of growing inequality, as a consequence, there are tensions that emerge. So one of the things that I'm really keen to see is like how Grenada can avoid going down that trajectory. So especially with the work that I do, even if we do a tour, I'll make sure that at least 6 or 7 Grenadians get paid, so that money trickles down and gets out into communities and also gets beyond St. George's itself. So I think when we think about what development looks like as a nation, yes, pleasing those from outside, but also making sure that all of us are getting a seat at the table and everyone feels that they have a stake and benefit from Grenada's development. I think that's what true sustainable development looks like, especially if we want to keep things equal and secure. And I think that's one of the sort of things that Maurice Bishop spoke about, when not focusing so much on tourism, that the local people end up being deprioritized. Like, it has to be a symbiotic relationship. And I think that's why the people who I work with often come wanting to give back. They're very much my line of, don't just sit on the beach drinking a pina colada. They understand that if you say to me, I just want to buy a CBI passport, or I just want to drill for oil, or I just want to rip up tons of rainforest, I'm not going to be the person to work with you, because I feel like the island should benefit from you being here, because I live here. I think it's very easy to give a lot of misinformation, but then you're going to run into me at the bank or in the supermarket queue, and you'll know that I've told you a whole lot of lies. So I think Grenada is, because of its size, it keeps you honest. And I think ideally it should attract the sort of people who want to be honest as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that sustainable tourism bit here, because I think when people think about sustainability, they only think about, getting rid of plastics. They think about, doing good things to the reefs, but they don't think about that exploitative nature of tourism that exists. It's extremely exploitative. And I remember Angelique Nixon, who is an academician from Trinidad and Tobago, she wrote a book. I have it in my library there, but which really speaks to this perpetuation of a plantation tourism economy. Yeah. So I want you to pick up on that idea.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think it's something that Fiona at Know Your Caribbean does quite a lot. And she actually has a directory of locally owned businesses in the Caribbean tourism industry, which actually aren't the majority, which is quite worrying. But I often, and even it goes back to the customer service experience. If I go to a bar and try to order a drink, and then the person at the bar looks at me like I'm causing them a problem, I can feel a certain way about it. But then if I reflect on, okay, how much is this person earning? What circumstances have they come from? What is the environment that they're living in? If I know that the model of tourism is basically paying them minimum wage so that people higher up get the profits and those profits are then sent overseas, that is not sustainable. It's not sustainable for me as a person wanting to have a good experience. And it's not sustainable cumulatively for the island, for the vast majority of people to not actually be profiting, and not to go on a rant. But I feel that this is an issue beyond tourism. I think in so many sectors, that issue of making sure that locally Grenadians have a stake and are fairly paid and that it's not exploitative. Decades after, or centuries after the ending of slavery, that plantation model really does have to shift. And I think my one way of doing it is working with people who understand that. And who are very committed to not playing a part in that. I mean, Dr. Ross worked as a psychoanalyst for many years. He doesn't need to work, but coming to Grenada, and I'm not trying to get him into more work, but coming to Grenada, he has seen the need and he's volunteered his time. And I think really, tapping into the energy of Grenada as an island that does believe in better and that can do better and knows that the degrees of connection are so small that the small actions that we take can have very significant ripple effects, really attracting those sorts of people, whether it was tourists or for longer term stays or for the diaspora coming back from overseas or from other Caribbean islands. I think that to me is what sustainability looks like, because then it becomes not just sustainability, it becomes regenerative. If we understand that a lot of damage was done during the colonial era, during the plantation era, and that if we want different for the future, we need to start making wiser choices now. I think that is where the conversation really starts to get quite exciting, and the scope for social innovation really becomes something really interesting for us as a nation to explore, because Barbados isn't doing it, Jamaica isn't doing it, neither is the Dominican Republic. So I think that's where we have a regional competitive advantage.
Dr. Ross, I want to loop you back in, sir. If you can just turn your camera on. I'm not sure if you left and have gone to a beach or somewhere here, but you've traveled a lot, sir. You've been to the motherland. You said you've been to other places, and you've settled on Grenada.
Yes.
You really started to talk about your experience in Grenada, but I want you to pick up on some of the conversations we've been having here around the experience that people have when they visit Grenada, and really on what Zoe just articulated here around ensuring that Grenada is able to maintain that authenticity that it has, right? That Grenada does not want to run the risk of becoming a mass tourism space like the Dominican Republic, a place I would never visit for a number of reasons. One of which is the mistreatment of our Haitian brothers and sisters. But that aside, I want you to reflect on that, your experience in Grenada, and in the context of that unique proposition that Grenada offers.
Right. Well, I think part of it is just the sort of friendliness of the people. Growing up in the States and stuff like that, when I left the South, I was in California. It's a car-driven society. So people very seldomly see each other on the streets and say hello. Because of the construction of the new water system pipelines in Grenada, you're driving along and being caught in the traffic. I see, hey, Dr. Ross, how are you? I said, whoa. Gosh, people actually remember me and say hello and stuff like that. But it is like that. I go to Grenada quarantine point every morning to go for a walk, and the guy who is in charge of opening the gates, he just told me, look, if you want to get in, you do this. If I'm not here, stuff like that. People are very, very open and friendly. I do agree, with what Zoe was saying, that how we treat people. It has a lot to do with whether people are open to you. Just driving down the street and waving at people. they remember you the next time you come through that area and wave again. You know, the smiles that occur on people's faces and things like that. One thing I hadn't expected was the level of poverty and stuff, you know, sort of going in different areas. I see the great need, you know, of being able to give. And I hope during my stay here, you know, at least until I die, to be able to give something to the people to help out. I see kids with uniforms. I find out some of these families, they can't afford to buy these uniforms for their kids to go to school. It's a real struggle. So I think helping out in just small ways like that, and notwithstanding, you know, my training as a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst over the years, that's something that can be helpful too. But, you know, just making direct help to people when they're trying to struggle getting their kids back into school and things of that sort. And, you know, I saw one school where kids are drinking water from a hose, you know, not to say there's anything wrong with drinking from a hose, because I did that growing up, but it's sort of like coming from the States and seeing it and say, whoa, what happened here? You know, these kinds of things. But the people are really genuine, the ones I've met, the ones that Zoe has introduced me to. There's some really nice people who are trying to do things for and with the people of the island, I think.
Absolutely. And so I want to bring back, and then we're just going to have a broad set of a broad conversation here too, and then we'll get to closing comments. But let's get to Mr. Lewis and Mr. Dolan here. Mr. Dolan, you've heard both Zoe and Robert about just imagining what Grenada currently is and what we don't want Grenada to become in the context of other tourism destinations in the Caribbean. I want you to pick up on what they've been articulating, Randy.
Well, these are fantastic points. And remember, when I started the segment, I spoke about a more holistic approach, right? I didn't just focus on, you know what, we have great hotels, cruises are doing well, let's just stick to that. I took about our holistic approach. We spoke about the blue economy, fisheries, agriculture, training, education, and all of it. The reality is Grenada has only 1,800 hotel rooms, right? So when we speak about that in terms of scale, most cruise ships that you see coming in during the week has more hotel rooms than the island of Grenada, right? So we have the great opportunity to build a hotel system, or rather a tourism system that is inclusive. And the GTA, as well as some other bodies, we can actually work with, like, for example, our small vendors or small business owners to help them develop how they package, how they market themselves. We have that training going on. We had that training last year. We have more training coming up again this year, where we try to help them to get out of the hustle mindset, but into the small business. I'm a small business operator. Get into that frame of mind. We're actually now working with Grenada Cooperative Bank and other providers to ensure that they are now able to have access to tap to pay from the credit card companies. Because what you're seeing now is increasingly visitors are not traveling with cash in their pocket. They have money, but they don't have cash in their pocket. And if you're unable to use technology right now to receive payment, then you're going to get left. Especially now as you see how the world is going, where people even carry their physical credit cards anymore. It's all on their phones. And you have to be able to position yourself where your product it stands out, it's well presented, there's a desire to purchase it, and they're able to purchase it. I know I personally don't even carry cash anymore. So if I have to get something from one of the small businesses, I have to go to the bank and then come back. But I could give it to you immediately if you have the tap. And we are pushing that heavily now for most of our small businesses, because we're trying to upskill them in that manner. So when we speak about collective benefit, and especially in the yachting and marine section, we know that there's a huge gap to fill there, because there's demand for these products, there's demand for service, and that is a creation of high-paying jobs and opportunity for our local people, especially the provision that comes with it. Most of the times they want the fresh fruits, the fresh vegetables, and the fresh catch from the sea. And there's opportunity there to continue to have that money directly filter into the economy. And again, the way we position Grenada, that destination, again, it's not just about the pina coladas, but go out into the community. We focus a lot on the culinary aspect of it, where we encourage you to go to the small restaurants and enjoy the food, and not just in Grandans, but especially in the north, especially in Caracou. One of my favorite restaurants is Armadillo in the north of the country. You always stop at Belmont. You can go to Chef Andre Bernard's restaurant up in St. Andrew, and there's so much to see and explore with the destination. So, and that is a type of tourism that we're building. And when you even think about the higher end hotels that are coming on stream, a lot of them cater to the local customer as well. You can walk into pretty much all of them at any point to go in for a birthday celebration, because you see that there often. Birthday, anniversary celebration, or whatever that's happening, because it has to be inclusive. And when I speak again about all of the infrastructural work, the educational development, is all about how we can collectively rise to produce a sustainable tourism economy that benefits everybody. So we have that opportunity now, before we start really scaling to 4,000 plus rooms, that we can collectively take everybody along with us, and we could collectively benefit from us, because ultimately tourism just can't work for the few at the top or the 5%. It has to work for everybody. And once we are able to do that, it is proven that it does have great economic impact and can create good benefit for livelihoods for everybody.
Mr. Lewis, is there anything else you wish to add on that point? And you're talking about scaling up. I'm sorry, I can't help it, Mr. Darland. I take great exception to that monstrosity that's been put up there in Livra. I just have to say it. It's at a national park. We talking about sustainable tourism and talking about pure Grenada and all of that, and people come in for that unique selling proposition. What is that? It's a monstrosity. I'm sorry, I just have to say it. I'm known to speak my mind on these issues. I'm an environmentalist. It's something that I remember going when I was in high school at PBC. We would go up there to watch the turtles nest their eggs at night. That is gone now. But that aside, Mr. Lewis.
So, everybody has made some very valid points. And I want to come back to something that Zoe said earlier. Get in to ensure that people in the outlying areas in our villages in the north, etc., actually are getting the filtered dollar down to them. Okay, I think that's an important part of something we've been having a conversation about called community tourism.
Yes.
One of the issues we face in Grenada is a national transportation system that can traffic people from the south, from the north, back and forth, and visitors. We don't have that in Grenada. Our bus system, which is not a national system, but it's an individual operated system that serves national interests. By 9 o'clock, you can't be in Soteres as a visitor going to a local tourist destination of their local restaurant and get back to St. George's. You'd have to rent a car, you have to rent a taxi. So we've limited ourselves a little bit, and it's something I hope whether it's this administration or future administrations look at in developing some sort of a national transportation system, which will not only help the movement, of course, but it will help us tap into a job pool of people who live out in the out areas that don't think it's economically feasible for them to come and work in St. George's. Because by the time they pay a bus and move back and forth, they don't have any money left. What's the point? So there are a lot of little things that have to happen. The chairman said something about 4,000 rooms. For us to get there, that we have some infrastructure that we have to do to ensure that we can support and use the word sustain that sort of a growth. So, it's necessary because societies evolve, we grow, we have to expand to meet world market trends and things that are happening. But we have a lot to do in Grenada. And I think one of the key things, I give you an example. A lot of our hoteliers have staffing problems. And the reason we have staffing problems is St. George's is already saturated. So now we have to try and bring people from the north, from the east and the west and the northern sector. How do we get them down here? We can't. How do we get them home at night? We can't. Some of your bigger hotels have their own transportation system that may get them to their village, but then they may have to walk another mile or two in the bush to get home. Well, we have a lot of things we have to work on, and that requires planning and thinking outside of the box of how we operate as a tourism destination locally. Internationally, we're doing some fabulous things, marketing the destination. We're on track. We're being recognized, but we have some work to do here locally. And I think everybody on this panel, realizes that we really have to get this product locally a little bit stronger and more community-based. Because Zoe, you're very right. I mean, the little man in Grenville that has his little shop is not getting as much as the little man in St. George's.
Yeah.
It's not equally distributed. And for us to have sustainability, that has to work.
And finally, to you, Mr. Lewis and Mr. Dolan, and we get to closing comments from Dr. Ross and Zoe as well. Carnival. One of the things that prompted me to produce this program in consultation with one of my other producers is what we've been hearing. At least there is such huge demand for Grenada Carnival that there might be a run on accommodations on the island. That's what I've been hearing. I've had people reach out to me personally who are interested in visiting Grenada for Carnival. I brought 2 friends to Grenada last year for the first time, and I'm happy to report that they're coming back. One of them is interested in getting land. I told them I have a preference for St. David's because, that's the best parish, right? But let us talk about that demand for Carnival. What are we seeing? And Mr. Lewis, I want to, as someone who is in the hotel sector and accommodation sector, what is that looking like for Carnival? And more specifically, I'm not too sure if the Hotel and Tourism Association has on its radar sort of the Airbnb style accommodations. I'm hearing complaints that there's a lot of price gouging happening there. I'm not too sure how much conversations you guys have about regulating that part of the sector. That somebody's saying that, they're going to pay $70 a night for this accommodation, and then between the Carnival period, that same accommodation is $200 a night. So let's pick up on that. So Lewis.
Well, it's a free economy. Somebody wants to charge $200 for their room. I can't complain and tell them not to do it. It's very interesting you brought that up. The chairman and I actually met with some a few months ago. And one of the things I've been advocating for is mandatory registration of all vacation rental property businesses with the GTA. You don't necessarily have to do it with GHTA, but that gives the governing body of tourism in Grenada access to data and room stock that's there. When we don't have that, just to get it from them, it's like pulling teeth. Having said that, room stock will always be an issue at Carnival. So the Carnival market distribution is very interesting. You got a lot of diaspora folks coming back who stay with family and friends. You have a lot of groups of people that rent villas. One of the problems we have in the hotel industry is that 2 people may book a room and 4 people end up staying in it, not even notifying the hotel staff, and they sneak them in at night because there isn't enough room. And then there are issues where, have a load on water, electricity, and all the amenities associated with how you price your room. Carnival has become huge. It is so huge that we will have a problem with room stock. There's nothing we can do about that because we just don't have the rooms. We have hotels that are being built. Now, your larger hotels that have the larger room stock, like your Sandals, your Spice Inn, Radisson is actually a huge Carnival destination location. Are you going to spend what it is to go to an all-inclusive resort to come for Carnival? That market isn't there. So your Carnival travelers go to the lower-end hotels, the middle hotels, and they look for the little rooms. And the little person who wants to rent it for $200, I don't think we can regulate that. We don't even know if the property is acceptable for somebody to stay in because they're not registered. And if they're registered, they'll get inspected. They'll make sure they meet certain standards set by the government for accommodation. If there's a problem, we don't have a quick fix for this. We don't. I'll give you an example. I rented a few years ago, I have a 2-bedroom apartment. I rented it to 4 young ladies, which 2 per room. On the 3rd day, even before Carnival was started, I had 8 people living in a room. Because they're all coming to Grenada. And I literally had to go down and say, listen, no, you can't do that. You have to go. And in my contract, legally, I can ask you to leave. I wouldn't do that, of course, to the 4 people who rented. But it's a problem. We don't have the rooms.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to have.
It's
Good problem to have.
But Mr. Dolan, a good problem to have. Carnival is so popular that
Well, demand is always good to have.
It's a good problem to have, of course. Yeah.
Have over demand and short on supply, and of course with the basic economics, right? It does create price increases, right? So you see that across the tourism sector that in the festive season, that's Christmas over New Year, the prices are the most expensive. When it's the winter season, in North America or the northern hemisphere, like you're having snow today. You want to leave. The prices are the most expensive. In the summer, they're less expensive. Remember this, right? When we think about how we grow and grow sustainably, Carnival is a 2-week period in August, right? Where there's a rush on rooms. The real constraint on room supply is now, right? For the most part, is now. And this is when we are able, we're sold out. And this is why it's a little bit harder to get more airlift into the destination, because ultimately where you're going to put the visitors coming in. 80% of arrivals coming onto the destination at this time is coming in through tour operators, right? That means that is booked through travel agency, tour operators, etc. It means that they must have room and airlift to sell the package and get them to Grenada. And now you start seeing things like stop sales going out where hotels are saying we have no more rooms. And when those stop sales go out, then the likes of Virgin, British Airways, American Airlines, Delta, they're like, well, we can't take any more passengers, even though we might have capacity, because there's no place to put them right now, in a month, especially January, February, and March. And then you see that happen around Carnival, where in some instances, you're going to have a situation where 4 people book a room and 8 end up staying, but you don't typically have that in the high season, which is right now. And this is why, having more demand for hotel rooms is important, so we can scale our airlift. And by extension, once we scale our airlift and have more availability of airlift, it helps, again, equalizes the pricing. Because once Grenada remains in high demand, more visitors are coming to Grenada, limited amount of space, it drives the price up. So it would help more. It would help everybody, pretty much, if there are more optionality to get more visitors to the destination, where we can accommodate more people. And I think even from Carnival, I think that even the most expensive rooms and the most expensive resorts, they were all sold out coming into the season. And now you're seeing that again, going back to the point, we have to continue to grow demand and prove that Grenada is investment friendly. We're open for business. You can come in, you can invest, and see good returns. And also, before we leave, I also just like to also mention the fact that we have Diaspora Homecoming this year, the first one, Homecoming 26, right? And why am I mentioning that? Because this is a great opportunity for everyone to gather, right? Citizens that have not been home, or those from that of Grenada lineage, and they would like to come home, that you come home to Grenada. We're going to have forums where you have meetings, networking opportunities, investment forums, and understanding exactly what the government is doing to improve the island and our way of life here more holistically. And it'll be an important part to talk about what investment opportunities are. How do we get more rooms, and how do we get more businesses to help support not just tourism, but just a wider economy, especially as we're now attempting to diversify. So yeah, the issue with rooms is an ongoing one, and we hope that at some point we can get to the place where we can scale efficiently, and everybody gets the benefit.
Let's get to some quick viewer comments here, and I want to, and then we will get to a final break and then close the program. But a very interesting point is being made here about several viewers have brought it up, and I'll just go ahead and read their comments. I would prefer to keep my place empty during Carnival than having the jab mess. That is one reason why my place has become limited. So, and there is another one. There is another one here as well. We have another viewer. That's from Meme here. I think it's probably the same comment about jab. I've lost the comment now, but it's pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same idea. So, Mr. Lewis, is that perhaps one of the reasons why we're seeing that greater pressure on accommodation, because a lot of folks have essentially removed their properties off their listings, their private properties, that is, of their listings because of the oil and the jab?
Oh, it's a real issue. There's no question about that. I mean, so jab has become very iconic and symbolic to Grenada's spice mix right now. I think people come for it. They enjoy the beauty of the history of the jab and its exoticness, the way it looks and everything like that. But it's a real problem. If you look at St. George's at the end of Juve on Monday, it's a mess.
A controlled oil spill every year. Yes, I agree.
Businesses put barricades in front of it because my property is on the Grand Dance main road. I don't paint my property for the new season until after jab, because the wall, as people walk by, their hands rub it, their body rub on it, it goes from its beautiful color to black. And black is a beautiful color, don't get me wrong. But the problem with jab, and they come in with the oil, they don't rinse properly, they don't clean properly, they dirty your sheets. And for those of us in the hotel industry who invest in quality sheets and products that make our visitors experience comfort, to replenish that costs money. So again, you up your price because you're going to try and recover it. You add security deposits, which you don't normally do. So it's a real valid point that this person is making in the comment that's their prerogative. I don't want to have jab on my property. I close it down. It happens.
Nope, but that's correct. And if I may add a point here to that, I mean, I'm also in the Airbnb business, and my prices will go up because one is supply and demand, right? And the fact is, I'm booked out to 2027 already, right? Gone. But the fact is, I know there's a premium to. I have to accept that my visitors may not be as mindful. And that means that I have to invest in more money to clean the property, buy new sheets, buy new towels, because of the old oil, if they're playing old oil, right? So that is a real thing. It's something that has to be considered, because you have to be able to replenish, turn over the old sheets, get new sheets in, and then make sure that you're ready for the next visitor that's coming in after them. So that is a real concern.
So let me just point out.
Yes, Mr. Lewis. Yeah.
So it's not just about property that is damaged during jab, and I don't want people to feel I'm having a negative stance on jab. So this is just an observation. It's not criticism. Yeah. So before I get beat up online, please be aware that I'm. No. Okay. So I have a very secluded beach at the back of my property. Yeah. I can see all the boats on jab morning going to Grand Dance, and some actually stop next to me. So for those who stop next to me, we go down and we provide garbage bags. We provide squeezy. I provide water. And yet still, when they come out of the water and they leave all the nasty old shoes on the beach, and I put the trash bag there for them. If you go on Grand Dance Beach on the morning of jab around between 10 and 12, all you see is just the trash. So jab in itself as being no iconic to Grenada is quite detrimental to our environment.
That's one of the reasons why full disclosure, I don't play jab, and Grenadians side-eye me for doing that, because I don't like the smell of the oil, one, and two, it's bad for my skin. I have very sensitive skin. But go ahead, Randy.
But can I add to that? The fact is this. Okay, the issue on Grenada's beach, it is a problem, because we have actually get our beach cleaners geared up, ready for Juve morning. Right, so we could come out there and try to clean the beach as much as possible. We even tried to put more bins down. Believe it or not, the bins get stolen. The bins get stolen all the time.
Steal a bin? Okay.
They steal bins. I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand it too. But when we said let's put more bins down, they said we put the bins down and they're gone the next day. I don't know if they want to drag the bins in the street to play Juve, but the bins get stolen off the beach. But we gear up our beach cleaners to ensure that the beach remains clean. And these guys work every single day, doesn't matter what day of the week it is. So special shout out to them, because they're like one of the most important people in our tourism sector. If Grenada's beach is not clean, it's not going to be an appealing place for anybody. And this is also a special call to our local people. Because it's usually our people that's making the mess and just leaving all the trash on the beach. Even on a given day, you come and you see KFC boxes, the beer bottles at 5, 6 in the morning on the beach. It's our people doing it. So we also have to take pride in our place, keeping our country clean as well, and try to find a bin or as close as possible, get it to the bin, but don't just leave it on the sand where we have to go clean it up. But also, when you think about, okay, the last year, Carnival, I was also on the old oil thing. But, Jab Jab didn't originate from old oil. I think it was just easier for us to play. We started using charcoal. It started from molasses, right? But we started using charcoal, for example, which is environmentally a lot cleaner than old oil.
Yes.
And the charcoal actually did really well. And I was like, at the end of the day, it's actually good for your skin, right? There's some health benefit. We could argue that, but it's better than old oil. So I see that we can start transitioning to more environmentally friendly uses. Instead of using old oil, you use charcoal. And I wasn't a believer until I played with it last year. So I think that there's a remedy to some of these things. There's a solution where we could evolve from old oil to something else. Jab Jab is a big draw. It's a great distinction of Grenada's Carnival, especially over Juve. That's why we're second to none. So we want to encourage that, but at the same time, while we encourage Jab Jab, encourage doing so safely and responsibly, do so that we protect our environment, which means also not defacing property, and of course, destructing, where we're staying and messing up streets, etc. So we just want to keep that in the mind, especially of our people, that when we're out there and we're doing this is our country, we have to protect it for us.
And I would just add this. There is a young lady, her name is escaping me now, but I remember last year, I really wanted to play jab, but this young lady said that I think she has a background in chemistry, but she was attempting to master a lotion. It's a sort of like a lotion, like a shea butter type compound that would have the same color, same consistency as the old oil, but obviously not. But it's a lotion, so it would not necessarily stain, and it's easy to get off and things like that. So I think those things need to be invested in. And the last point I would make here has to do with, sorry, Mr. Dolan, yes, you say you're putting the bins on Grandance Beach and all of that, but Grandance is not Grenada. I'm just going to say there are other beautiful beaches in Grenada too, where I think after Juve and after Carnival, that the same sort of environmental surveillance needs to be looked at as well.
I agree.
Including my favorite beach in Grenada, which is Kabye Beach. That's me on Kabye Beach.
I agree. The only reason I said Grandance is because the GTA is directly responsible for the cleaning of Grandance Beach. We're directly responsible. It's vested to us, and we're directly responsible for the maintenance of the beach, Grandance and BBC Beach. So that's why I was using that as an example. But no, Grenada is filled with many beautiful beaches. We have 45 great beaches all throughout the state. And my favorite beach is actually in Caracas, so it's Paradise Beach.
Paradise Beach is a good one. Folks, we have a lot of questions, but I'm sorry we could not get all of this. It's a very important conversation that we are having today. So what we'll do, we'll take our final break and come back with the full panel for some closing comments. So please stand by for that. Hi, everyone. The Bubb Report is committed to being fearless, balanced, and independent, bringing you the stories that matter most without compromise. Now do us a favor. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell so you never miss an update. You can also watch us on GBN TV every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Catch us on WPG10 television every Sunday at 8 p.m. Your support helps us to keep journalism free from bias and influence. And together, we can make sure every voice is heard and every fact is verified. Thanks for watching. And folks, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Of course, before we get to our panel for closing comments, I just want to reminisce on Kabye Beach. Shameless plug now. Although Kabye Beach is next to Crowshoe Beach in St. Andrew, those of us who live in St. David on the border of St. Andrew, Lambert Bridge area, Kabye Beach was one of those beaches that informed our childhood growing up. So it was, it was Latan Beach, yes, but Moso Kabe Beach is a beach that we frequented a lot. It's a very pure and on-sport beach. Dr. Ross, whenever you get the opportunity, I want to encourage you to visit Kabe Beach in Cruz St. Andrew. It's a beautiful beach. The water is relatively calm, and it's very clean. It's for the most part, it's a very secluded beach, except on weekends when folks are frequented a lot. So again, that beach is part of my childhood. I took some drone shots while I was there.
How do you spell it?
Cabier.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Thank
Cabier,
you.
Cabier Beach. It's yes. So it's my favorite beach, but it's my favorite beach in
I'll look
Grenada.
into it. I'll
Yes,
check it out.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So viewers, let me bring back the panel here for some closing comments. And Zoe, thank you for joining us today on the program. I do follow your work on YouTube, the Exodus Collective, I believe it is called. Yes. And you do very important work of really showing up Grenada. And it was very fascinating following your journey, returning to Grenada and giving context to that returning to, a place that you love and cherish so much. So I'll go over to you for some closing comments.
Yeah, when are you coming back?
Yes.
No, this has been a really fascinating program to be involved in. And I guess I'm in the privileged position of not having a job where I'm responsible for tourism. So it's very easy for me to come up with ideas and think about what could or couldn't happen.
Yes.
But I think even in the way in which we're talking about Carnival, about JAB, and talking about Carnival, about Grenada's Beach, I think there's a real opportunity for us to understand, and I know it sounds strange coming with someone with my accent, but who are we as Grenadians? Because even our Carnival is about a lot more than JAB. We have Vector, we have Wild Indian, we have, so if someone wants to experience traditional mass, they could go stay in the Victoria area. If you want to experience a different Juve, you have St. David's, you have Citez. So I think really us understanding who we are as a people, what are our values, what matters to us, and how do you really access that knowledge of who we are? Some of the work that I'm doing is with Bonaire Government School up in St. Mark's, working with the original plantation owners up in Scotland and reconnecting the dots so that people who've grown up on this land and who've been impacted by that history really understand the wealth and the resilience and so much that they have to offer. So whether it comes to the relics and the architecture and the archaeology that they could offer in terms of community tourism, or understanding the ways in which their food is influenced by West Africa, that level of knowledge replicated across the island, one, it gives us an opportunity in terms of community tourism, but also it helps us to really stand proud as a people to understand who we come from. So for me, because it's not my job, I get to think about that and have conversations and facilitate work in those sorts of areas. But as a Grenadian and as someone who's trying to understand what sustainability looks like and who is inviting people here, us as a nation really standing strong in our identity, I don't think there's any way in which we can go wrong with that, regardless of what Trump says with his ridiculous warnings and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Ross?
I was listening to everybody. It's been a lesson. Sort of feel like an anthropologist here, sort of hearing what some of the problems are, and even some of the celebrations here, the problems that it entail, the aftermath of these celebrations, like Spice Mass and stuff like that. But on a more personal level, there's a little school that I'm hoping to get involved in a place called Corinth, and really trying to help in a small way some of these families that may have some difficulty in just doing some of the basic things. I mean, I found out that textbooks cost so much money here that people can't afford it. They may be 3 or 4 weeks before they can get a reader for their kids and stuff like that. I mean, I grew up in the South in a place where all of our books were hand-me-down from white people. It was in 4th grade before I had a book with a cover to it, maybe the experience here in Grenada, I don't know. But, some of those things, having grown up in poverty myself, it leaves something, and it also leaves a wish to sort of leave the world a little bit better off if you can. Although Trump is to sort of negate a lot of those good wishes and being helpful. But thank you so much for allowing me a chance to interact and hear some of the issues that Grenada is facing. Some of them Zoe's talked to me about, but others in some small way, I hope I can participate more.
Just as an aside, Dr. Ross, you said you grew up in the South. Where in the South did you grow up?
Georgia. I grew up.
You grew up in the Jim Crow South, so you experienced the Jim Crow era.
Oh yes.
So everything that's happening in the United States currently, you experience a lot of that.
Yes, absolutely. There are very few of us left, who actually went through all of that, getting off the sidewalk for white people, going to back doors, all this kind of stuff. Just being aware that your life could be snatched away at any moment. So feeling and seeing ICE doing these same things, right down the road from where I live was the head of the KKK. So, it's just growing up in terror and now seeing it come back again.
Yeah, it's history repeating itself, and I really wish our people in the Caribbean would acknowledge that, and especially some of our pick-me's. But that's for another conversation. Mr. Dolan, sir, over to you, sir, for some closing comments.
Well, again, I'd like to thank, the panel for the wonderful discussion today. Thank you to you for facilitating, and to you and your viewers, all of them overseas who are battling the cold. Grenada is always warm. We look forward to having you come back and welcome you here. There's some flight cancellations that's disrupting the schedule a little bit today and tomorrow. But, once you get on a flight, please make it home. But I think that ultimately, to close out, I would just like to say that, we understand the concerns. I think that we're blessed that some of the concerns that we do have are not much deeper, right, than other destinations. The fact that Grenada still remains one of the safest Caribbean destinations, statistically, that is a fact. The fact that we get to enjoy this beauty every day, we're truly blessed for it. And I think the holistic approach that we're taking, not just to develop tourism, but the economy and our people, is the focus of this administration. And the push to do so, to ensure that everybody collectively rises and benefits, is the goal. So there are a lot of projects that are on the way to facilitate that. I know sometimes there's a lot of upset caused because of the inconvenience with some of the things that are happening now. But we know ultimately the goal is to get to a much better place, to build a much stronger country, a much stronger premier tourism destination, and ensure that we are all the benefactors of it, the people of our beautiful Tri-Island state. So again, thank you again for this opportunity. And, we look forward to a strong 2026, continue to have record numbers, record arrivals. Doesn't matter what happens externally, we're focused on what we have to do from the Tourism Authority. So we're going to be pushing forward. We're going to continue to work closely with all of our partners, including the GHTA, Blue Economy and Agriculture and everyone else. And we're just going to continue to be resilient. And that's all that we can do at this point, is focus on our business, be resilient, and continue to push Grenada forward.
And of course, you can only control what can control. I think it's very important to make that point. And of course, our final panelist here, that's Mr. Elvis Lewis. Again, thank you, sir, for appearing on the Bubb Report. And over to you, sir, for some closing comments.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Bubb. I really appreciate the opportunity. Fellow panelists, thank you very much. Thoughts and ideas flow, and out of this, I think we can work towards a few things. But before I actually say a few tourism comments,
yes,
I just want to let my GBSS listeners know that I'm surrounded by a bunch of PBC folks. So I'm standing proud, a GBSS class of 76. Just got to say that, okay? Dr. Ross, you made a very important comment. You said you're a psychologist. Is that correct?
I'm a psychiatrist. Psychoanalyst, yes.
And you want to help young people. We have a after-school program in Montu with an average of about 42 kids. It's a very tough neighborhood in Grenada, and I would really like to get your service to help with some of the challenges we face with young people. So you can reach me through the GHTA, and I would love to get your services there.
Fine, thank you.
It's a great program for young people, and we average close to 40 students sometimes, and it's purely an after-school program.
Okay.
A few comments. Listen, Grenada's tourism product is strong. Very, very strong. We have some challenges like any destination in the Caribbean region. And I think the work between the GHTA and the GTA, we've really solidified that partnership. We were asked to be back on the board 2 years ago, representing the accommodation sector, the dive sector, the tour operators that make up the membership of the GHTA. The chairman and I have a fantastic relationship and conversations. The CEO of the GTA and the CEO of the GHTA are working a lot closer together. And the end product, everything is focused on doing the best for Grenada with tourism. We may not get it right all the time, but there's a saying that says the constant pursuit for excellence is something that we're continuously trying. So people who have input and thoughts about what we may be doing wrong or ideas that we can enhance what we're doing, send them in. Don't keep them to yourselves. Don't criticize. Offer them. We may not necessarily agree with every idea or may be able to implement every idea, but it will be good to have them, and they can have conversations that hopefully can result in real change that elevates tourism in Grenada, locally and internationally. So thank you again, fellow panelists. Really love chatting with you guys. Dr. Bubb, thank you again for the invitation. Truly appreciate
Absolutely. Panelists, thank you so much. And there are other questions when the program is done. Mr. Dolan, Mr. Lewis, Dr. Ross, somebody's asking, where in Georgia are you from?
It's a little town called Bainbridge. It's down in the Tallahassee, Florida. Yeah.
Bainbridge. Which part of that? Which part? Richard Holston is asking which part of Georgia is Dr. Ross. So Bainbridge. There we go. And then I believe Elimas Gilbert, Inspector, good to see that you're watching. Quickly, you're saying that people come to Grenada for jab. Full stop, period. Of course, he's an entertainer, so he's a well-respected, he's a veteran. He's a veteran, so respect Dr. Jocelyn. Yes, go ahead.
Jab is a hook, but we have so much more to offer, and that is what we will continue to expand on. I mean, my favorite is a vehicle. But the reality is that we can't go selling vehicle because nobody will know what you're talking about. But we will continue to grow that. We will continue. But jab is the hook.
Yeah, it
but
definitely is.
We do have a lot. Yeah. We do have a lot more to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So, panelists, thank you all again. I'm looking outside my window here from my home study, and it's snowing. It's snowing heavy.
And there's a saying, right? Sorry to interrupt you. There's a saying. There are two types of people in the winter, right? Those who freeze and those who go out and enjoy it. Yeah. So go get it. So get your sled. Go build a snowman.
I'm looking out my window right now, and it's beautiful and sunny at about 86 degrees. Just saying,
Yeah, don't go there. Beautiful beach.
Don't go there. You all are hurting my feelings right now. Okay.
All right. Come on home.
Me, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's right.
Just showing you, okay?
All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for appearing on the Bubb Report this week. Viewers and listeners, we want to thank our panelists for agreeing to join us today for a conversation on travel and tourism in the face of this so-called travel advisory, and that's why I put travel advisory in close quotes there. But I want us to go down memory lane a bit. Now, during the Grenada Revolution, 1979 to 1983, the U.S. government strongly discouraged travel to Grenada, particularly as tensions peaked in October 1983. In fact, some of the travel advisories that they said back then, they said that they were armored cars. And again, that was before the collapse of the regime in 1983. But they were saying that they were armored cars on Grandad's Beach, that the students were being kidnapped. And, it was just doom and gloom during the Grenada Revolution. And the history would record that many African Americans, in fact, visited Grenada during that period. members of the Black Panther movement, for example. I spoke with Congresswoman, I believe Barbara Lee from California. She visited Grenada during that period. Angela Davis, great activist, Black activist, Angela Davis, someone whose intellectual epistemology is what I aspire to be. She visited Grenada. In fact, they did an entire documentary called The House on Cocoa Road, chronicling her time in Grenada during the revolution. So during that period, there were a lot of people, especially our people of African descent, who saw Grenada as that ideal destination to escape from what was happening in the United States at the time. It was sort of the beginning of the crack epidemic, and it was the beginning of the so-called war on drugs on Black communities in America. A lot of African Americans visited Grenada, stayed in Grenada for long periods of time during that era. In fact, we had a delegation from the Institute of the Black World of the 21st Century who visited Grenada last year, I believe it was in May, to commemorate Malcolm X's mother, Louise Langdon Little, who was born in Grenada, and they erected a monument in her birthplace in Ladigue, St. Andrew. So again, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, again, in the context of geopolitics and Grenada's place in history, one should not be surprised that given the re-emergent sort of Jim Crow 2.0 authoritarianism that we're seeing, that because of Grenada's place in history, that Grenada would be targeted, especially by these folks, and given Grenada's relationships with places like Cuba and Venezuela. So I thought that it was important to say that. So again, viewers and listeners, I want to thank you for your spirited contributions for this week's edition of the program, and we will see you next week again for another installment of the Bubb Report. Take care. Bye-bye.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me here for much more than diplomatic passports. I don't buy that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this. So I'm not too sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
Not be contesting any election. And I think it's clear that people know this. But they can't leave me alone. I'm still the topic. Every time I say some Bubb Report, every time you hear some discussion, people that you don't know have no connection with me, they don't know me, they're talking about me. You don't even know me, you never talk to me, we never had any relationship, but they have to talk about me. Keep talking about me. Make me relevant when I don't want to be relevant. Keep doing it. I love that. I love when I see, I laugh, I have fun when I see them talking about me and I don't even know them. Fellas I don't know, they're talking about me. They know me better than, and they never discuss anything. They never had any discussion. We had no relationship, but they know me better than myself. Interesting. So I repeat, the grape story. The grapes is sour.
Well, I was about to wrap up.
You can wrap up still over there.
But before we go, right?
A settling down.
right? But every minute, they putting me on the papers. And they putting me on the papers with a nice woman. And they hope that I get vexed. Put it again next week, man. I put it again. Aye, man, aye. Hey, they don't understand. That is man. What do that? Hey, put it, George, put it again next week.
Should your loved ones